Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
The wife wanted new sensations and cheated with her neighbor? Is everything as simple as it seems, and is it worth giving marriage a second chance for the sake of a newborn child? Will the DNA test save the main character and prove his wife's fidelity? In today's story we will find out. Enjoy watching. My name is Eric Sampson. I'm 35 years old, and I'm looking at my newborn daughter through the window of the maternity ward. Her mother is resting and feeling well, and I'm waiting for the nurse to come out and give me scrubs so that I can hold my daughter in my arms. For some reason, the nurses always want me and other visitors to wear scrubs and go through cleaning before allowing us to touch the baby. I guess it makes sense because I wouldn't want anything to happen to my little angel before she starts her life. They dress me, and I take her into my arms. Once again, I am amazed at the absolute beauty of this wrinkled little miracle. From the first second I saw her, I loved her more than anything in the world, whether she knew it or not. I could already imagine what kind of person she would grow up to be. I was ready to watch her grow and help her on her journey in life. No matter what happens, her mom and I will be there to guide her. After what felt like just a few seconds but was actually an hour and a half, I reluctantly gave her back to the nurse. As I left the room, I noticed a very attractive blonde waiting for me. My joy evaporated, and my smile turned into a grimace. "Mr. Sampson," said the guard, "we don't usually let people into the maternity ward unless they're family, but this woman said she's related to you." "It's okay," I told him. "Unfortunately, she is my wife." "How can it be bad to be married to a woman who looks like that?" he asked. "Believe me, she's trouble," I said loud enough for only him to hear. "You looked really good there holding your baby," Andy said, walking towards me. "You will be a great father. But I think you should reconsider your actions. This divorce will not happen, no matter what you try. I will block it in every possible way. We need to sit down and talk. Our bickering through lawyers is only making them richer. Can't we just talk, just for a few minutes? Andy, my wife, is beautiful, spoiled, and curious. She is used to getting her way regardless of the circumstances and simply cannot accept when things don't go according to her plan. Andy is well built at 36 years old. She has a bikini figure, a beautiful waist, and long, slender legs. Her features are a little sharp, but she has the bluest eyes you've ever seen. She is also a woman who loves to have fun. She's definitely not a flirt or an ice queen. Here's the nasty part, I need to be there when Melissa wakes up, I told her. That gives us about an hour to talk to you, she said. Let's go to the visitors' lounge. There should be plenty of privacy there, unless you turn this into another argument. But remember, you're the one who wants to talk. So if you start yelling or pestering me with your nagging, I'll make them throw you out of here. We reached the hall and sat down in chairs in the far corner. It's your show, Andy, I said. So say what's on your mind and get it over with. She licked her lips and began to speak. Well, first of all, I wanted to say that I forgive you for cheating. I forgive you for breaking the rules that we set for our relationship. I forgive you for getting another woman pregnant and leaving her. I want us to put this behind us, and I want you to come home with me so we can fix our marriage. I understand that you will have to pay Melissa child support, but I think you should limit the time you spend with this child so that it will not be difficult for you to choose between him and our children. I love you, Eric. I have never loved anyone but you, so I am ready to forgive everything you have done and bring you back. I also promise that it will never be mentioned again. We'll just move forward. I won't hold it over you or anything. Let's just say it was a big mistake and erase it from our minds. Melissa always wanted a baby more than anything else, and Mike couldn't give it to her. So if we reunite, everyone wins. Oh, Andy, could we really do this? I asked, with irony in my voice. Are you giving me a get-out-of-jail-free card just this once? She smiled, nodding her head and reaching towards me. I will never lose you for anything, nor will I share you. You are mine forever. I would kill Melissa before I would let her have you. I recoiled from her as if she were on fire. Go to hell, I barked at her. Then I got up and left. Then I realized that Andy should never have been released. She was still crazy. I went to Melissa's room. I smiled at the nurse and pointed to the door. "She will sleep for a while," the nurse told me quietly. "I can't think of a place I'd rather be," I said. "I want to be the first person she sees when she wakes up." The nurse smiled again and waved as I entered the room. Melissa was lying on her side facing me. I pulled the blanket closer to her and sat on the chair next to the bed. She was beautiful even sleeping. It must come from inner beauty. God knows Andy was beautiful on the outside, but she looked like a damn witch when she slept. Somehow, when she was not conscious, her inner ugliness simply showed through her mask of expressions. As I looked at Melissa's blissfully sleeping face, the last 16 months just disappeared. I'm a successful architect, and Andy and I just moved into a house that we built. Some neighbors were initially unhappy with our home because we had purchased 2 adjacent lots and demolished the existing ranch homes on them. We then built our dream home on this site and remodeled it. I think our house was quite large compared to other houses in the area, but it was our dream home where we could grow old together and raise our family someday. It took a while for many of the neighbors to come around, but Mike and Melissa came to meet us the very first day we moved in. They lived right next door, and you could see our porch from their kitchen. Mike was quite strong but had a slight belly and a permanent 2-day stubble. Melissa was very funny and, although not in Andy's league, was truly beautiful. Melissa was short, and her body, although not like bikini model Andy's tall and slender, was very attractive. She had big breasts and a round but, unfortunately, she also had a rather wide waist. If it weren't for her belly, her figure would be incredible. They brought out pizza and beer, and we spent that first evening getting to know each other. It was the first of many evenings we spent either on our deck, in our pool, or in our living room. Over the next few months, we became best friends. Mike and I often went bowling or played golf on the weekends. We always rode in his truck or my souped-up Mustang GT. I love this car. It has custom paint, Flowmaster exhaust, and too many other modifications to mention. If you saw the car, you'd think it was just another red Mustang with stripes along the lower quarter panels. On closer inspection, you would notice that the stripes are the outlines of the buildings I designed. It's a beautiful car, and I still love it. It will be strange to put a child's seat in the back, but you have to do what you have to do. Many evenings, we just spent together either at Mike and Mel's or at ours. Mike, like every other guy I've ever known, couldn't take his eyes off Andy, whether she was just relaxing in jeans or wearing one of her bikinis. My wife always turned heads. "Have you ever thought about an open marriage?" Mike asked me one evening while the women were doing their own thing. "We don't have to swing, but maybe that's a good idea," I said. "No fool, I'm talking about, trying someone else's stuff. It can really put the spark back in your relationship. Even if you eat steak every night, sometimes you want to try a little chicken or fish, if you know what I mean." "No, I don't know what you mean." "I'll see you later, Mike," I said, standing up. When I went to bed that night, Andy asked why I was so upset. "It's okay," I told her. "Mike just said something really stupid. I swear to you, we have our whole lives ahead of us. I'm going to spend the rest of my life with you, I swear," she said. "We'll be happy and have a better family, just not right now." She wrapped her arms around me, and we fell asleep. Since we've been together, Andy has gotten used to sleeping with one leg and one arm over me. She claimed that it had become a habit and she could not sleep otherwise. Andy and I slept every night and sometimes in the morning without a break. We were usually too into each other, and I loved her so much that sometimes I found it hard to believe. I went to work every day with a long drive in my Mustang. Andy stayed home and took care of the house. Melissa and I often waved to each other as she drove off in her old Honda each morning. Mike was between jobs, so he stayed home. I was glad about this because it meant that in an emergency, Andy had someone who could get home faster than I could. A few weeks after our conversation about open marriage, it came up again. This time, Andy brought it up. "Eric," she said, "have you ever wanted to try another woman?" "Hell no," I snapped. "I love you, and you are enough for me." "Well, I'm not saying I want you to just go out and sleep with some random woman. I'm just saying that maybe we should invite someone over," she said. "I am just curious." "Besides, we're almost there," she said. "Andy, what are you talking about?" I asked sharply. Haven't you noticed how the last couple of times Mike and Mel came over, you and I started making out, and Mike and Mel started making out too, she said. While we were doing this, Mike was looking at me, and I just thought. She hesitated. I wonder what? I snapped. Well, how would it be? She said quietly. Be more specific, I said sharply. Andy wasn't used to the harshness of my tone, and she moved away from me a little. I don't think she was ever afraid of me hurting her because, God knows, I'd died before I hit her, but she's just not used to me not giving her what she wants right away. Let me give you an example. After I received my first commission and did well on it, my then boss gave me a significant raise and bonus. My idea of money was that we put it aside and start saving for a house. Andy brought the paperwork for her BMW to my house the next day. To sign the down payment alone would have negated the bonus, and a monthly payment would definitely tax my income. This car cost more than the house we lived in at the time. We ended up eating tuna for a month, and Andy got a car. Be more specific, Andy. I want to make sure I understand you clearly, I repeated. You're asking me to sleep with another man, right? Well, not the other man, just Mike, she said quickly. No, I said sharply. Wait, I'm sorry. This didn't turn out the way I wanted. Hell no, never in this life. I shouted as loud as I could. At that moment, for the first time since I met her, I could not look at my wife. I stood up, overturned the chair I was sitting on, and left the room. A few hours later, after I had gone for a run and cooled down, I walked into the kitchen and saw Andy sitting at the kitchen table munching on her dinner. Here, I'll bring you a plate, honey, she said. I walked past her without saying anything, took a beer from the refrigerator, and went out onto the deck. I always liked the view from this terrace. This was one of the reasons it was included in my design. I looked over and saw Melissa sitting at the kitchen table, probably grading papers, and wondered if she knew what my wife, her supposed friend, had suggested. She probably had no idea. Melissa was a beautiful woman, certainly not in Andy's class, but she just needed to take better care of herself. If she got rid of that belly and lost some weight, she would be very attractive. I couldn't believe my mind was wandering like that while I was looking at the moon from my terrace. I guess I wanted to think of something other than Andy's suggestion. Even before I married her, I knew that Andy had an extremely strong drive. I always thought that I was enough for her. I always thought we were both pretty. Obviously, she began to need more. I think she saw it as just one more little thing she could ask for and try to get her way. It seemed to me that this was much more serious. For me, this was the first sign that we were growing apart, and I loved her so much that it just broke my heart. It really is a beautiful night. It's warm, and that big old moon really lights everything up, she said behind me. Is there anyone here who would like to try skinny dipping in our pool with me, or should we take this upstairs? She came up behind me and hugged me. Andy, let me go. I came out here to be alone, to think, but this is your house too, so if you want the porch, I'll go somewhere else, I said. I'll go sit by the pool. Is that far enough from you? She replied sharply. Not enough, I answered her, just as sharply. I stood up, walked back into the house, and grabbed my keys from the island in the kitchen. Before Andy could react, I was already out of the house and driving away. The rumble of my Mustang's exhaust and roar of the V8 alerted the neighbors that I was on my way. I seemed to drive forever that night, and although it made me feel better, I knew it wouldn't solve my problem. I say my problem because even though Andy was the one who ruined our marriage, it literally hurt me to do anything she didn't like. Over one stupid evening, I shouted at her, swore, and left her. I had never done even one of those things in our entire time together. Usually, when we argued, our script was different, we compromised, and I bent a little more and a little more until I either agreed with her or she got her way. Andy was my soul, so in a way, pleasing her also gave me pleasure. Andy's smile made me feel good inside, especially when I did something to trigger it. It was simply impossible to share it with anyone else, even temporarily. I was always paranoid about her loving me. I remember the first time we visited her family, I was jealous of the time she spent with her brothers and sisters. I needed to have her all to myself. Her father even once told me that his usual warning to men dating his daughters was not necessary in my case. "Son," he said, "I call you son because I'm sure you'll eventually marry my daughter. She loves you, and she'd be stupid to let you go. I usually tell guys that if they hurt my girls, I'll do it myself. I will find them and kill them. But in your case, I have a different warning. I know you love Andy, but remember, you can tell her no sometimes. It will really make your relationship stronger in the end. If you continue in the same spirit, sooner or later, she will ask you for something that you are not ready for without losing a part of your soul. By then, it will be too late because she will get used to the fact that you do not give in on anything. You are a good person," he told me. "Andy needs this, but don't let her turn you into something you don't want to be." "I would never do anything to hurt her," I told him. "I'm not worried about you hurting her," he said. "You clearly love her too much for that. I'm more worried about her hurting you." The next morning, as I was leaving the house to go to work, Andy came out of our bedroom. She looked terrible, her eyes were red and puffy, and she just didn't look right. "Where have you been?" she asked sharply. "You know I can't sleep without you." "I got back in about an hour," I answered calmly. "Just went for a drive to clear my head and think." "What were you supposed to be thinking about?" "Why didn't you come to bed?" she asked. "I slept in one of the guest rooms on the first floor," I said and walked past her. I did virtually nothing at work that day. Andy called me twice on the way to work and then started sending me text messages. The first thing my secretary told me when I walked into the office was that I needed to call Andy immediately. I didn't, and 10 minutes later, my cell phone rang. "What do you need, Andy?" I asked. Whether you know it or not, my job is not just an extension of home. I have business here, that's why I'm here. "What is wrong with you?" she asked softly. "Do you not love me anymore?" "We'll talk when I get home." "Please don't call me again today." I hung up and tried to start working, but I just couldn't concentrate. All I kept coming back to was Andy. I was checking the cost of brick versus siding for a project I was working on. Before I could finish the calculations, I was wondering what my life would be like without Andy. I ended up doing the same calculation 4 times and never finished it. I turned on the computer and switched to a project where I could just draw. The house I was working on was for a famous lawyer who wanted something truly unusual. I came up with a design that amazed him. The house was mostly underground, with only a large sunroom visible above the surface. The black house had already been built and was almost ready to move into. I just needed to finish the landscaping projects. Drawing also turned out to be a bad idea. I couldn't even connect 2 damn lines without thinking about Andy. I went to lunch with several clients and one of my partners to discuss a promising business project that could make a lot of money for all of us. I was still wondering what Andy was wearing and what she was doing at that moment. Did she still love me? Where did I go wrong? Could I somehow undo what I had done to make her want someone else? What did Mike have that I didn't? When I got home that night, I was ready to talk to Andy, but that didn't happen. As soon as I walked into the house, I smelled steaks on the grill. I walked through the kitchen and out onto the deck and saw Andy in one of her bikinis, and Mike cooking on my Weber. Melissa sat at the table checking papers. She was wearing a dark-colored swimsuit. Her legs under the table looked much better than I expected, and her breasts, as she leaned over the table concentrating on her papers, were amazing. I think my glance at her was more curiosity than desire because although I noticed her body was better than I had ever thought, it didn't arouse me. I went back to the bedroom and changed into jeans, comfortable shoes, and a t-shirt. "Hey, shouldn't you wear a swimsuit?" Andy smiled. "For what?" I asked. "Well, honey, we all hang out by the pool. We usually just wear bathing suits. Even boring old Melissa wears a swimsuit," she said, smiling. The smile quickly disappeared when she saw that I was not smiling. "Eric, I was just kidding. You know I love Melissa, she's like my best friend. I know you're tired after all that work, so just come down. You can wear whatever you want. Your steak is almost ready. If you hurry, you can eat it straight off the grill, however you like." Andy returned to the pool. I heard her say, "He's just changing his clothes, he'll be there in a minute." I went out the front door again. I don't even think they realized I was gone until they heard the loud sound of my Mustang. I drove along the lake and stopped at a Burger King along the way. I parked in front of the lake and ate my double cheese Whopper while playing games on my iPad. After eating, I got out of the car and spent some time throwing stones into the lake. Throughout the evening, I saw several attractive single women walking by either alone or in groups. Some of them looked at me, one or two even started walking towards me and tried to start a conversation. I think my body language and the fact that I held up my wedding ring to emphasize each sentence made it clear to them that I wanted them to understand. They quickly retreated and left me alone. What upset me most was seeing several couples in love walking hand in hand along the water. When they smiled at each other, hugged, or stopped to kiss, I wanted to shout at each of them. My jealousy of what they had and what I probably lost made me want to go up to every guy and tell him something. Run from her while you can before she rips your heart out, I would say. Sure, it's great now, but is it worth the pain you'll go through when she decides you're not enough for her and wants to entertain your friends? I stayed outside a little longer that night. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning when I returned home. Andy was lying on the living room couch with a blanket. As soon as I closed the door quietly, it still woke her up. Her eyes were red as hell, and she was clearly crying. I didn't say a word to her. I didn't want to upset her anymore, so I just turned around and went upstairs. "Eric, what the hell is wrong with you?" she screamed. "Yesterday and for the last 10 damn years, you were all around me, and now you can't even stand to be in the same room with me. It's like I'm dirt on your shoe, and you're just trying to scrape me off." "Andy, I'm not going to try to talk to you while you're yelling at me," I said. "I came home with the intention of trying to talk, but you needed to have a party. You wanted to talk to me so bad while I was at work, but as soon as I got home, that need disappeared somewhere. I need to sleep because I still have to go to work tomorrow, so why don't you fit me into your busy schedule? We'll talk then." "What party?" she asked. "It was just Mike and Melissa. We see them almost every night, they practically live here." "What's wrong with you? Don't you love me anymore?" "Yes, Andy, I love you, always have." "I think that's the problem between us," I said. "Anyway, I need to sleep. Why don't you call Na and arrange a meeting for us to talk?" I went back downstairs to get away from her. I was really proud of myself for my reserved behavior. "Where are you going?" "Is our bedroom upstairs?" she asked sharply. The only sounds in the house as I drifted off to sleep were the sound of the downstairs guest room door closing and Andy's sobs. The next evening, Andy was waiting for me at the kitchen table. Something was cooking in the oven, and it made the house smell very nice. "Can we talk now?" she asked. I sat down at the table opposite her. "Eric, what's going on between us?" she asked. "One day we're the perfect couple, and I'm sure more than anything that you love me. The next day, you can't even look at me. We haven't had intimate in 2 days, and while that may seem normal for most couples, for us, this is forever. I miss you, I'm going crazy. I want us to go back to the way things were." "Andy, this may not be possible," I said. "Why?" she asked. "What did you do? Did something happen while you were driving?" "Andy, I didn't do anything but ride around alone," I replied sharply. "You ruined us." She shook her head. "I didn't do anything," she said. "So you don't think your offer to sleep with another man hurt us?" I asked sharply. "Don't you think the fact that I'm not enough for you hurts us? I've read stories about open marriages, Andy. They rarely end happily. Most of the time, it just sets the couple on the path to divorce. Not all of them end in divorce, but a larger percentage of them break up than stay together. This is especially true in cases where only one partner wants to open the relationship. Anything that opens up can also close," I said. "That's what this is all about," she said, laughing. "I went through 2 days of hell thinking you didn't love me anymore because of something I was interested in. Curiosity killed the cat, Eric. I really thought it was over. You said no, I left it. End of topic. But no, you needed to go away, think about it, and withdraw into yourself like a damn child," I continued. "Damn it, Eric!" After Mike talked about it, I just thought, especially after the last time we were all together, what it was like. You're the only man I've ever been with. You know how much I like intimate, and I just wanted to know if all men are the same. So you decided to try this after talking to Mike, I said. It was expected. He asked me about it 2 weeks ago, and I turned him down outright, she said. One of us must think our marriage means something. Now we know who. Mike doesn't care about your awakening or your curiosity. He just wants to seduce you. He's stuck with Melissa, who, although a very sweet woman, is a bit of a gray mouse. He starts seeing you walking around half without anything all the time and decides to see if he can get into your pants. I guess it makes you feel special or curious, huh? I said. It may not be the only reason, but it's one of the reasons why I thought of Mike, she replied sharply. I wanted to try someone else, and I chose Mike because he's not a threat to us. He's your best friend, so he won't try to take advantage of the situation. I don't like him, so I won't want him. It'll only be this one time, and you'll be there. Maybe you can satisfy your curiosity with Melissa, and there's no chance I'll get pregnant from him. Oh, you made a list, I said. Eric, this isn't about us. I don't want to be with anyone but you for the rest of my life. I'm not going to fall in love with Mike and leave you. This isn't about not being enough for you, it's just intimate. There's a big difference between love and intimate, she said. No, Andy, I said. I thought you loved me. It looks like I was wrong, she replied. You're a complete zero. Oh, Andy, I love you. You say it so often, it's like a broken record. But when I need something from you, even a little unusual, you refuse. It will only be once, no, I said. That's so like you, she replied sharply. You're so selfish, always thinking only about what you want. My opinion doesn't matter. If not letting you sleep with someone else is being selfish, then I guess that's who I am, I told her. Andy, I really love you. I love you too much to ever want to share you with anyone else. That's what I mean by selfishness, I replied sharply. You just don't know how to share. We've been together for 10 years. We probably have intimate at least 7 or 8 times a week, if not more, since the day we got together. No one else has touched me. That's 7 or 8 times, 52 weeks a year, which is about 400 times a year, at a minimum. Multiply that by 10 years, we've slept over 4,000 times, Eric, she said. I was just asking for permission to let someone else do it once. If the only reason we're together is because no one else is having intimate with me, it's really sad for our relationship. I said nothing. The conversation was over. You know, I could do this behind your back and not say anything, she said. I could have gone out, found some guy to satisfy my curiosity, and never would have told you. You would never have known. But I tried to be honest with you, and look where it got me. It's good to know that you trust me, Eric. What happened to that expression, love without trust means nothing? I came to you and tried to talk about my feelings, and this is what I got. Thank you for nothing, Eric. But this is my body, so I accept this decision. Good night, Andy, I said. Wait, Eric. I don't want our conversation to end like this. We need to find some kind of solution, she said. I'm going for a run, I told her. Andy, you're a grown woman. Do what you need to do. But if you do, make sure you can handle the consequences of your actions, because this conversation may not be the only thing that ends up here. Where are you going? She screamed. We're not done yet. Maybe we're done already, I said. I changed my clothes and went out for a run. When I returned, I was sweaty but feeling better. I stepped into the shower and turned on the water. I didn't notice Andy had joined me until I heard the door close. She ran her hands down my back. I moved away from her as far as I could. Andy, there are 3 bathrooms in this house. Find another one, I said, pushing her away from me. I took a shower while Andy sat there with a shocked look on her face. Then I got dressed. Are you ready to end our conversation? She asked. Our conversation is over, I said. See you later. If you walk out that door, I'll have intimate with Mike, she said. Andy, you're going to do it anyway. You already decided that before we even started talking. I don't even know why you needed to tell me that, I said, looking at her. She lowered her eyes to the floor and could not meet my gaze. I wish you could understand what I'm going through and just let me do it. It doesn't mean anything, she said. If you do this, Andy, everything will change between us. I can't keep an eye on you all the time, so I hope your curiosity is worth our marriage. But like you said, it's your body and your decision, I said. Perhaps you're the one who's refusing us because of your stubbornness, she said. The only response I gave was the loud sound of the door closing as I walked away. I returned home early that night and went to bed in the guest room, as I had done most of the week. Andy knocked on the door around midnight, saying she wanted to talk. I locked the door so she couldn't come in, and when I heard her, I pretended to be asleep. The next day, my world began to fall apart. I returned home at the usual time and noticed that instead of sitting in her kitchen grading papers, Melissa was sitting on her porch, crying. "Hey, Mel," I called. She looked at me and burst into tears. "I knew I couldn't sit in the kitchen and watch them on your porch," she said through tears. I burst into the house and saw Mike getting ready to jump into my pool. Just as he jumped into the air, ready to plunge into the water, I punched him straight in the face as hard as I could. He fell into the water and spat out a mouthful. "Get out of my house," I told him. "And never come back again." "Hey, buddy, calm down. It's over." She wanted it. She was the one who suggested it in the first place. She told me you were okay with it, so I took the chance. Who wouldn't? "Don't make me ask you to leave again," I said. "Next time, I won't be so polite." I turned and saw Andy coming out of the house. She didn't hear anything that happened between Mike and me. She ran up to me, smiling. "I told you it didn't mean anything," she said. "Now that this is behind us, we can get back to normal life." I took out my phone and called a local taxi, giving them our address. "The taxi should be here in 10 minutes. "That's how long you have to get your things," I said. "If you're here even a minute longer, I'll throw you outside in your bikini." "Eric, what's going on?" she asked. "We're done, Andy. It's over. You can go to your parents, to a motel, or stay with Mike. I don't care. Just get out of my house," I yelled at her. "Please, Eric, it's over." "It won't happen again," she whined. "You told me to do it last night. I knew you weren't happy, but you just told me to do it so I could get over it and we could get back to our lives." "Andy, that may be what you heard, but that's not what I said. You were the one who said if I walked out the door, you'd sleep with Mike," I said. "You probably would, in any case. It was not me who told you to do this. Ever since this idea came up on the agenda, I have made it clear to you that I am against it. I also warned you that if this is what you need to do, then be prepared to face the consequences. These are your consequences. Now, you have 6 minutes left to collect your things before the taxi arrives." "I don't need a taxi," she said. "I'll drive my BMW to my parents. When you pull your head out of that's where I'll be, Andy. The car is in my name. If you drive away in it, I'll report it stolen. We'll be in jail by the end of the day," I said. She looked at my face and saw that I was serious, then ran into the house crying. A few minutes later, the taxi arrived. "Hey guy, did someone call a taxi from here?" asked the driver. I just nodded. "Andy, your ride has arrived," I shouted. "If he leaves without you, you'll have to walk." I gave the driver $100 and told him to take her anywhere. Andy walked out of the house carrying a hastily packed overnight bag. "You should have packed a lot more." "You're not coming back," I told her. "Please, Eric, we need to talk," she begged my retreating back. A few minutes after the taxi left, Andy started calling me. I turned off my phone and turned off calls on all phones in the house. I went out onto the veranda and sat down. As bad as I felt, there was someone who felt even worse. "Come here, Mel." "Misery loves company," I said. "We'll go eat." She didn't say anything, just sat there, so I grabbed her hand, pulled her into the front seat of my Mustang, and drove off. We drove around until we found a decent restaurant. I ordered takeout for both of us, got back in the car, and drove to the lake where I usually went every evening. We ate in silence, and then suddenly Melissa began to pour out her feelings. "Why did he? Well, I know why he did it, but why did she do it to you? Are they crazy? I know Mike doesn't respect me, but I thought Andy loved you. I'm sure she does. All she talks about is you, Eric this, my Eric that. Why did she do that? I thought she was my friend. I started rubbing her back, and she sobbed a little, then started talking again. I know Mike has been mad at me lately, and this was his way of getting back at me for a comment I accidentally made, but it was too cruel, she said. Sorry, Eric. It's probably worse for you than it is for me. I'm fine, I said. What do you mean? Mike was mad at you. Well, Mike was injured when he was younger and couldn't have children. I knew that when we got married, and it was okay with me. I always wanted kids, but I wanted Mike just as much, so I became a teacher. But lately, that hasn't been enough, and I really wanted to experience motherhood, Eric. I want a family. I want to share all this love I carry inside me and raise my own children, not just teach other people. So, I brought up the question of the possibility of adopting a child in front of Mike. He freaked out. His exact words were, "Oh, so I'm not a man because I can't get you pregnant? Okay, I'll show you who the man is. I'll seduce that little next door and make you watch." It took him 3 weeks, but he did it. We haven't spoken for a while. When it got dark, the couples went for a walk, and I was really too sad to see them walking hand in hand in front of that damn lake. Plus, there were too many large rocks around that were perfect for throwing, so we left. I returned home to an empty house. Melissa returned home to Mike. At first, I heard him yelling at her and her yelling back. After a while, the screaming stopped, and I saw her sitting at her kitchen table, checking papers. The next morning, I went to work as usual. Na immediately handed me a stack of messages from Andy. I threw them all in the trash and told her not to forward any calls or messages from Andy to me. If she calls, just tell her that I don't accept calls or messages from her, I said. I then gave her my iPhone and asked her to go to the AT&T store to change my phone number. Around 10 o'clock in the morning, I received a call from Robert Morgan, Andy's father. He was going to be in town in the morning and wanted to meet me for lunch. We met at Texas Roadhouse at noon. I hadn't seen him for about 3 weeks, and at his age, that kind of stress could be dangerous to his health. "Hi, Eric," he said. "Let's get down to business. We both know why we're here. I warned you about this before your wedding. She might stay with us for a few days until you both cool down, but Martha and I want to stay out of it." "Well, when you and Martha kick her out, she can live with her sisters for a while and then with her brother," I said. "I hope by then we will have settled the financial issues so that she can find her own place," I added quietly. "Eric, what are you talking about?" he asked. "In our state, a divorce takes at least 6 months to be finalized, but our lawyers will have to resolve all issues long before that," I said. "Between you and me, I'd rather pay her the whole amount at once so I don't have to pay child support every month or something like that. I just want to put an end to this issue and move on with my life." "Eric, I still don't understand," he said. "Andy said you had a disagreement and you yelled at her, so she decided to stay with us for a few days until you calmed down. Last night, she cried like a baby and didn't eat anything. I know my daughter. When Andy is sure she's right, she's as cold as ice, but yesterday she cried. I know she did something that finally made you reach your breaking point. Did she buy another car? Last time she did this, you had no more than $50 a week to live on. She couldn't even go anywhere because you couldn't afford gas. I thought you were financially secure now, Robert. I don't think I should be the one to tell you what Andy did," I said. "It's not my place to discuss someone's actions." "Damn it," he said. "She really set you up, didn't she? And the stupidest thing about it is that I can see in your eyes, on the verge of tears, that you still love her, Eric. I warned you about her once, but whatever she did, try to fix this. She loves you, and you clearly love her. You should be together, but don't back down. You might want to consider marriage counseling before going through with the divorce. I've heard you tell her more than once what you'd do for her. She's everything, isn't she worth at least one chance to save your marriage? Andy has always been strong-willed. I raised her to be that way," he said. "You know how you love to sit on that big old porch behind your house and look at the moon? Well, Andy used to crawl out of the window onto the roof and look at the moon when she was a little girl. I told her not to do that because she could have fallen off the roof and broken her neck. She did it anyway, so I scolded her and nailed her windows down. One day, when I was on a business trip and Martha was at a meeting at her sorority, Andy got out a hammer, pulled all the nails out of the window, and crawled onto the roof. It had rained the day before, and the tiles were still slippery. Andy fell off the roof and broke her arm. If it weren't for the bushes cushioning her fall, she would have fallen headfirst. Most likely, she would have broken her neck. After that, she never went on the roof again. Andy can learn, he said, but sometimes she needs to learn the hard way, by losing something really important to her. Maybe being away from you for a while will solve that problem. I'll ask her what she did and get back to you. Over the next week or so, my life moved in two directions at once. I started spending time with Melissa. It seemed natural. She was very angry at Mike, and I really missed Andy. Melissa started running with me in the evenings. She also started using my gym. I think a lot of it had to do with her anger and frustration with Mike. We talked a lot about our problems. If Mike loved me or treated me half as well as you treat Andy, I would forgive him everything, she said. But in our case, this is the problem. Mike doesn't love me. Maybe he once did, but now I'm just an old shoe to him. I go to work every day, bring in money, while he's been out of work for 4 years. When I get home, I have to cook and clean before I can grade my work. I'm tired of being invisible, and this was the last straw. I didn't tell anyone about it, but he cheated on me before. Andy knew I was dead set against it from the start, I said. This time, she just went too far, Eric. We're friends, so 2 things she told me. First of all, every time someone mentions her name, you almost start crying because you love her so much, and being away from her is killing you. Secondly, you've been together for 10 damn years, and this is her first mistake. For the sake of your own sanity, give her another chance. At least talk to her before you give up on her. The easy way is to just walk away without trying to fix the situation. I only wish this was Mike's first screw-up so I can forgive him, but it happened too many times. The next day, Andy showed up at my office. Security guards were warned not to let her into the building, so she sat outside and cried until someone called the police. The police came to the building and asked me to go down to her so that she wouldn't do anything bad to herself or anyone else. The first officer said no, I said. Have a good day, sir. The conversation is not over. The policeman was clearly angry at my casual attitude and wanted to prove something. What if we arrest you for non-cooperation and put you in the same cell as your beautiful wife, he said. Then you'll have to talk to her, sir, I said. What if I snap my fingers? I asked, looking him straight in the eye. What's in it, sir, he asked. When I snap my fingers, one of my assistants will call my lawyer. He'll be at the station before we get there. By the time you get me into the building for your bogus investigation, you'll be suspended, and I'll be suing the city for more than anything you'll earn in your entire career. To avoid any further trouble, let's discuss this in my office so I can explain to you what's really going on here, I told him. When we walked into the office, I asked him if he was married. He said he was married. I asked him what he would do if his wife asked him about sleeping with his best friend. He said he would never tolerate this. That's exactly what she did, I told him. I told her I wouldn't stand for it, but she did it anyway. I called her a taxi and sent her to her parents while we sorted out the divorce. She can't reach me at home, so now she's harassing me at work. I'm a partner here, and we own the building. I have the right to deny entry to anyone who might cause a scene or disrupt my work. I treated this woman like a queen, and this is how she answered me. I told him I never want to see her again. I never hurt her, hit her, or even yelled at her. Don't I have the right to be left alone in my own place of work, sir? You should file for a restraining order, he said. We were not aware of the circumstances when we arrived. Thank you for the clarification. We will not bother you anymore. But sir, may I ask you something else? I nodded. If you really don't want anything to do with her, why are you so sad right now? Sorry, I don't mean to offend you, but you look like you're on the verge of tears. You obviously love her a lot. Why don't you at least talk to her? He was right, of course. It was time to talk to her. I came downstairs just as she was getting into the Ford Fusion. It was probably Martha's car. I knew Robert drove a Cadillac STS. I knocked on the window, and she jumped out of the car and tried to hug me. "Step away from her, Andy. I miss you so much. Please let me come home," she said. "Andy, if you want to talk, I'm willing to listen, but it has to be in private. I don't want you to embarrass me at work." "Meet me at my house tonight around 7 o'clock, I said. "You mean our house?" she said. "I'll just go there now and wait. I'll make us dinner." "Andy, all the locks have been changed. This isn't our house. Maybe after the divorce, you'll get it. Who knows? I don't need no damn dinner. I'm just giving you a chance to say what you want to say, and I have a condition." "What condition?" she asked. "If you want to have this meeting, you need to tell your parents the truth about what happened between us. No misunderstandings. Have your dad call me at 7 when you're at my place so he can tell me he knows what happened, or don't come. I won't let you in until I talk to him." "Eric, can't we keep this between us?" she said pitifully. "No one else needs to know. If I don't hear from your father, I won't let you in, and this time I'll call the police myself," I said. That day at work, I received some bad news. The buyer of my nearly completed underground home died in a car accident. I was confident that I could sell the house, so I hired landscapers to finish the job so I could list it and sell it. The house was too unusual to please everyone, but the right buyer would be willing to pay top dollar for it. At 6 o'clock, I went for a run with Melissa. We had a good run together. I could run faster on my own, but it was so much more fun together. "How are things at Mike and Mel's house?" I asked. "It's cold as hell," she replied, laughing. "He doesn't talk to me, and neither do I to him. But you know what? I like it. For the first time since we got married, he doesn't boss me around." I took one of the brochures from the reception area and studied it. There are no longer as many restrictions on adoption for single parents as there used to be. Of course, I will need to find a lawyer and settle the divorce, but I finally realized that he needs me much more than I need him. I returned home at 6:45 p.m. and felt like I was being watched. I entered the house and took a shower. At 6:58, the phone rang. I picked up the phone. "Eric, I'm so sorry, son. I understand why you're upset. I can't believe my daughter would do something like that. I still think you and her have a chance to make things right if you can forgive her and let it go," he said. After a few minutes, I hung up and walked to the door. Andy stood there. "Can I come in?" she asked. "It's so stupid for me to ask this. This is my home too. Let's just talk here on the porch," I said. "It's a nice night and it's nice here, Andy. We're not back together, we're just here to talk," I said. "You really wanted to talk to me, so go first. You say what you want to say and then we'll see," she said. "What do you want me to say?" she asked. "I want our life back. What else can I say? I know you still love me. It will take us a little time to get over this, and then it will be in the past. We've been separated for 2 weeks. You've called me hundreds of times, sent your father to talk to me, harassed me at work, lied to your parents about the reasons for our separation, and that's all you have to say?" I became increasingly frustrated. "What do you want me to say?" she asked. "Nothing, Andy," I said, standing up. "I'll see you." I started walking into the house, and she grabbed my hand and started crying. She tried to make me turn around, but I didn't let her. She walked around in front of me and noticed that I was crying too. Tears flowed from my eyes, rolling down my cheeks and leaving small drops on the tiles of the porch. "What do I need to say to fix this?" she shouted suddenly. I couldn't stand it. I pushed her away from me harder than ever. I'm really lucky she didn't fall off the porch, otherwise, I probably would have gone to jail for assault. "How about 2 damn words, Andy?" I shouted. "First, I'm sorry. Have you ever said that? You regret all of this? Are you sorry for betraying our marriage vows? Are you even sorry for what you did to us? Are you sorry for hurting me? You know, you really ripped my heart out. How about, you ruined a marriage that probably would have lasted forever? I guess you don't know that word, right? You know what? Now I see how stupid I've been all this time. And that brings me to the second word, love. You see, since we've been together, Andy, it's never been about our mutual love. It's always been about how much I love you. I should have just fallen on my face and worshipped Andy's great goddess. Well, to hell with you, Andy. Wait a minute. Mike already did that. That's why we're here. I entered the house and slammed the door. I left her there on the porch crying. After about 20 minutes, she rang the doorbell. I looked through the peephole and opened the door slightly. Andy, I'm done talking to you. Get yourself a lawyer. You'll need one. Sorry, she said. I love you, and I don't want to lose you. I don't want to live the rest of my life without you. This isn't how it was supposed to end. I went out onto the porch to listen to her. Eric, I'm curious about a lot of things. As a kid, I stuck a pin in an electrical socket to see what would happen. Now, I wanted to know what it would be like to sleep with someone else. I found out it wasn't like that. It wasn't anything at all. It wasn't nearly as good as ours. It was a mistake, but you're exaggerating it. It doesn't mean I cheated on you, and I don't think it's a violation of our marriage vows. I told you I was going to do it. I wanted you to be there, but you refused. I wanted it to be exciting and fun, but it was boring. And because of this, I have to lose my house, car, marriage, husband, and happiness. It just doesn't seem fair, Andy. I told you about the consequences, I said. You just didn't listen. You never listen. Everything should always be the way you want. We didn't really have a marriage. It was meant to be something new for us, to bring into the bedroom and try every now and then, she said. You said you'd try women and bring home new tricks, and so would I. I don't want us to get bored of each other, she said. Andy, I've never wanted anyone but you. Only now you've ruined that because I don't even want you anymore, I snapped back. After 10 years I made one mistake, and that's it. Please give me another chance. I will do whatever you want. We will go to counseling, as my father suggested. You can do whatever you want to take revenge or make yourself feel better, whatever it is, I will do it. I promise it won't happen again. Are we worth another chance? You always said you'd do anything for me. I'm begging you, just give me a chance, let me make this one mistake. I swear you won't regret it. She looked at me, and she knew that she had won me over. You can come back tomorrow, I told her. But you really need to find a therapist for our consultations. Her smile could melt a glacier, and she rushed towards me. I stepped away from her and raised my hands. We're not ready for this yet, I said seriously. See you tomorrow. The next evening, as I finished my run, Melissa pointed to the porch. Here is your wife, she said. I'm sorry if I don't come talk to her. I know that sooner or later I will have to, but tonight is not that night. See you tomorrow, Mel, I said. Are you sure this is a good idea? She asked. Why not? We're friends now. Best friends, actually, because of our shared experiences, I smiled. Well, I just thought that maybe Andy wanted to spend more time with you, she said softly. Then she should learn to run, I said. Mel, you and I have nothing in common with Andy and I. I learned a lot about her through this incident, and I want things to work out between us, but I'm not sure I can do it. Some things can be overcome, but some become insurmountable obstacles. In this case, only I can make this decision, and I don't have an answer yet. I loved her so much that every day of her absence was torture for me. I don't know if I agreed to this because it was the right decision or just to stop the pain. When she gets closer to me, my skin breaks out in goosebumps. I'm just not sure we can fix it, I said. You're not sure you can fix what? Andy asked. Hi, Melissa, she said coolly. Andy came closer to me and tried to take my hand. I pushed her away and said, I'm not sure we can get back together. I'm confident enough for both of us that you don't have to, she smiled. Just watch, everything will be better than it was before, I promise. What the hell did you eat? There's nothing in the refrigerator, she screamed. Wait, there's salmon in the freezer. Why don't we grill it on the porch? I'll make rice and vegetables to go with it. I'll go shopping tomorrow while you're at work." That's exactly what we did. The first night together was awkward beyond belief. Andy didn't stop talking, trying to fill every gap in the conversation. She seemed to think that every time we stopped talking, we would break up again. I knew deep down that the easy chemistry we once shared was broken. I hoped that one day we would be able to restore it, but I did not know when or how this might happen. Andy started to say something, but her words were drowned out by a loud crash and the screams of the neighbors. "Does this happen here often?" Andy asked. "Almost every night," I replied. "When did it start?" she asked. I just looked at her, as if she was stupid. "Ah," she replied. "I guess I'm guilty of that too. But they've been married longer than us. They'll scream for a while to let off some steam, and then everything will be fine. I'm sure of it. Mal is saving up for a divorce lawyer. She's the one who works. She's finally done with Mike, unless something drastic happens in the next few weeks. Their marriage is over," I said. "How do you know?" Andy asked. "Mal told me," I replied. "For a man who doesn't want to touch me and barely talks to his wife, you're being pretty darn friendly with Melissa," Andy said sharply. "Everyone needs someone they can trust," I said. "Someone to share your problems with. That's the point. It must be me." "It was always you until you became a problem and lost my trust," I said. "Trust is something that is earned over time. When we first met, it took us a while to learn to rely on each other. It was easy then because we had no history, and we never hurt each other. For more than 10 years, we loved each other, trusted each other unconditionally, and we had a connection. We had a chemistry based on the fact that we almost knew each other's thoughts. Our hearts beat in unison. Andy, I didn't care about friends, family, a job, or money. Nothing compares to you. You were more important than me. I would die for you. I had 2 wishes, Andy. Do you know what?" "Yes," she said sadly. "All I wanted was to grow old with you and for us to have a child or 2. I don't need to be rich. I don't need to be famous or powerful. Andy, that's all I wanted, and you ruined everything with your curiosity. Do you remember how many nights we spent here just holding hands and looking at the moon? We probably only turned on that huge TV a few times since we moved here. Not because there wasn't anything interesting there, but because we just never needed it. It's all gone, Andy. I agreed to try, but I'm really not sure we can fix it. But it was just intimate, and only once. It seems like you're not even trying to overcome it. It hurts me too. It seems to me that now I'm just a broken toy for you. You don't treat me like a living being who has feelings and makes mistakes. You act like a spoiled brat who got his princess doll dirty and doesn't want to play with it anymore because someone else touched it," she said. "Andy, I know you love intimate. I do too. But there's a big difference between going and having fun with someone and what you and I did. It was more than a physical act. It was special. It was like we were bringing our souls closer together by sharing our bodies. And now my princess is sharing her body with the troll next door. We're not exclusive anymore, so it's nothing special anymore. It's gotten cheaper. It's something that anyone can get under the right circumstances. So now who or what will be the next object of your curiosity, Andy?" "Whoever it is, I won't make the mistake of telling you about it," she replied sharply. "I see what honesty does. Next time, I'll try lying, Andy. Right now, we're connected by the thinnest thread you can imagine. If there was ever a next time, we'd break up so quickly you wouldn't even notice. You wouldn't see me until we met in court. I was so close to leaving you this time that I stopped talking before I said anything I would regret. Even in the dark, I could see Andy crying. I realized that I had allowed my anger to cause me to say things that I shouldn't have said. Good night, Andy, I said. I'm sorry for what I said. I shouldn't have said that. I guess I'm still angry about the whole thing. Maybe it wasn't the best idea. Maybe we should have gone to counseling first before we moved in together again. I'm glad you let me come back. I couldn't bear another night alone, she said. I'd go crazy if I had to spend another day without you. Why do you think I came to your work yesterday? I know I'll have to work hard to get you back, Eric, but I'll do it. I swear that everything will be even better between us, she said. Now, let's go to bed. She followed me upstairs, and when I reached the master bedroom, she came in and sat on the bed. She pulled her shirt over her head and began to take off her clothes. Andy, what are you doing? I asked. Undressing to go to bed, silly, she smiled. Andy, we won't sleep together or anything like that for a while, I said. The house has enough bedrooms. Choose any one. Andy tried to hide her tears. You're not even trying, she said. Perhaps you don't love me anymore. The next morning, I had already showered and was almost gone when Andy ran out of the house still in her bra and panties. She knocked on my window, and I rolled it down. I left you the key on the kitchen island, I said. I haven't blocked your credit cards yet, so they're still working. I started to roll up the window, but she knocked again. Were you going to leave without saying goodbye to me? She asked. I noticed that you don't want to kiss me or touch me, but you should at least say goodbye to me out of politeness. Andy, you were asleep, I said. I didn't mean to wake you. I didn't sleep well anyway. And you can wake me up anytime you want, even if it's just to say goodbye, good night, or good morning, especially if you want to kiss me, hug me, touch me, or make love to me, she said. No matter what I did, I'm still yours and I always will be. I know I messed up, but I'm trying to fix it. When I arrived at work, Na asked me, Are you with Andy again? Yes, on probation, I replied. Okay, maybe now you can pull your head out of your, she said. She left you a bunch of messages. They all say the same thing. She loves you. You must have had a great time with her last night. Why don't you give her your new phone number so she can call you herself and save me from future embarrassment? When I returned home that night, I felt better. Hi, Andy, I said as I walked in and started getting dressed for my run. Can I have a couple of guests over for dinner? She asked. Andy, this is your house too. You don't have to ask me that. You've never asked before. I was actually glad that we wouldn't have to spend another awkward evening together. I met Mel coming out of her house. We ran our usual slow 4-mile lap and chatted the entire time. I couldn't help but notice that Mel had lost a lot of weight, especially around her stomach area, and she looked really good. I bought a new swimsuit today, she said. It's still a 1-room apartment, but Mike's eyes popped out of his head when he saw me in it. How are you doing? She asked. Strange, I replied. Our chemistry is just gone. It's like starting over with a new person, and sometimes she irritates me so much. It will pass. The first time Mike cheated on me, it was over 6 months before I could sleep in the same room as him, another month before we sleep, and even then it wasn't the same. Give it time, Mel said. When we finished, I said goodbye to Mel and headed into the house. Andy opened the door for me and then went to talk to Mel. When I got out of the shower, I went downstairs to see what Andy had cooked for dinner. It smelled wonderful. I went out onto the veranda and immediately got angry. Mike sat nervously in one of my lounge chairs. I told you never to set foot in my house, I snapped. Get out of here now, Eric, honey. I asked Mike and Melissa to come over for dinner and a swim tonight, Andy said. Please sit down, I have something to say. Melissa stood up and walked over to the lounge chairs next to us, and I was shocked. A month of running and little food had done their job. Her figure looked amazing. Until recently, the 4 of us were best friends, Andy began. Mike and I did something that, although stupid and petty, ruined our friendship. There were 7 relationships between the 4 of us, all of us together, the guys among ourselves, Mel and I, Mike and me, Mel and Eric. And 2 marriages. Of those 7 relationships, 6 are either broken or seriously damaged. I don't think we can ever be friends again. Maybe it's too much to expect, but I have a proposal which can help, at least to save 2 marriages. I don't think that's possible, Andy, Melissa said. I don't think Eric loves me anymore, and it's killing me, Andy said. I would give anything to have him hold me again. He hates Mike so much that I feel warmth from him right now. And Mel is not even ready to consider forgiving Mike. Eric hates Mike because Mike slept with me. This makes him think of me as damaged goods, and he doesn't want me anymore. You hate me too, Melissa, and you hate Mike for sleeping with me. The reason it's so bad is because of the lack of balance to balance it out. I think Eric and Melissa should sleep." Nobody said a word. Crickets could be heard in the background. "How will this help?" Mike asked. "They're practically dating anyway," he barked. "She comes over to your house every damn day to run, swim, or work out with him. They even have dinner together often. Not that I'm complaining, because all that working out and stuff has made her look better than ever. I'm ashamed, I'll admit it, but I cheated on Mel more times than I should have. Everything I told you, Andy, was just to seduce you. But I'm human, and I have desires, and I act on them. How do we know that these two haven't had intimate yet and just haven't told us? I keep catching her looking out of our kitchen window at him while she checks her damn work. Melissa and I have never done this," I said. "Neither of us cheated, and although I'm embarrassed to admit it, I agree with Mike. I don't see how two wrongs can make a right. If Mike stole your baseball and got it dirty, wouldn't it be fair for you to use it and get it dirty the same way? Then you'd be even, and you could be friends again." Andy said, "It's simplistic, but the logic fits. Let's just have dinner, and we'll discuss this later." We had dinner, and although we had eaten together many times before, this time was different. I hated Mike and couldn't imagine talking to him again, let alone being friends. Mike didn't hate me, but he felt uncomfortable around me because he didn't know if I'd get up and hit him at any moment or decide I wanted to sleep with his suddenly interesting wife, Melissa, who was angry with Mike and planned to divorce him and adopt a child. I still didn't know how to feel about Andy, but I couldn't take my eyes off Melissa. Melissa sympathized with Andy but continued to look at me. Andy was angry at Mike for tricking her and using her. Andy was jealous of Melissa because Mel and I were the only ones at the table who talked to each other, and for the first time, she felt that someone could take away from her what she wanted, which was me. After dinner, Andy cleared the table. Mike sat alone on the porch and watched as Mel and I talked to the side. Mel and I decided to play with Mike and Andy's minds a little. "Melissa and I have decided to think about it," I announced. "We've really become friends through all of this, and we're going to spend some more time together. Maybe we'll do it, maybe we won't. Maybe we'll do it and not tell you, maybe we won't do it but we'll tell you what we did just to confuse you." "Oh no," Mike said. "I don't like it either," Andy said indignantly. "To quote what someone told me recently, these are our bodies and we can do whatever we want with them," I said. "Tomorrow evening, Mel and I will go together. Maybe when we get back, it will be done, maybe not," I said. "Why don't you just drag her upstairs right now?" Mike said. "Let's get this over with already." "I really don't like it," Andy said. "This is unfair," I said. "Why not? You did it your way and then bragged about it. You couldn't wait to tell me how you did it and that it wasn't that good and didn't mean anything. Then you expected me to just let it go and say, 'Oh, Andy, you were right, everything's fine.' But everything's not okay, right, Andy? And maybe it won't ever be okay again. So Mel and I will do it the way we want, just like you did. Only this time, the deceived will sit at home suffering." "But there's a difference here," Andy said. "With me and Mike, it was just intimate. Mike thinks I'm a spoiled brat, and he wouldn't put up with my whims for a day. He just wanted to seduce me because I have a good body. I think Mike is a disgusting, lazy person, and I don't like it at all. I just wanted to try someone other than Eric at least once in my life. Melissa, deny it if you want, but my husband is attracted to you. I'm not just talking about intimate. You're attracted to Eric, and he couldn't take his eyes off your breasts, or your face all damn night. There's a real danger that you'll enjoy this too much. So I agree with Mike. You two should just get on with it now and get it over with, or forget about the whole thing. I've been through too much trying to get my husband back so I can just give him to you." Melissa and I looked at each other and moved closer to each other. Then we hugged as Andy looked on in horror, and tears appeared in the corners of her eyes. I have to admit, she really felt amazing, like we were made for each other. Then we brought our faces close, pushed away from each other, and shook hands. "See you tomorrow, Mel," I said. "Don't forget we're aiming for 5 miles." I took the beer from the table and headed upstairs. "Well, I need to check the papers," Mel said as she headed to her house. Mike and Andy just stood there with their mouths open. After a while, Andy knocked on the door of my room. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Probably," I replied. She entered the room wearing a robe that covered everything. This was the first time she was clearly crying. "Again, I'll find you an escort," she said. "What are you talking about now?" I asked. "It's only right that you two could sleep with someone else to make up for what I did, but I don't want it to be Melissa," she said. "I still don't know what you're talking about," I said to Andy. "There's something going on between you and Melissa. You may not see it, she may not see it, but believe me, it's there, and it scares me, Eric. All my life, I've been that beautiful girl. I always knew I could have any guy I want. I've never worried about losing a guy to someone else. It's hard for me to admit it, but until tonight, I never took Melissa seriously. I mean, she was always on the verge of being beautiful, but she is shorter and plumper than I. She has big breasts, but I have everything else, and her belly has always turned me off. But now my marriage is falling apart, and the stress and worry about what I could lose has taken a toll on me. I don't look my best, and Melissa somehow lost weight and got toned. I have to admit that she looked really good in that damn swimsuit tonight, and you noticed it. Mike is really angry, and he doesn't want you anywhere near her. You spend too much time together. I'm really afraid that because of your anger towards me and your so-called friendship, I might lose you," she said. "I realize now that I was quite selfish in our marriage and took you for granted, but that's over. It won't happen again, I promise. I know I have no right to ask for favors, but I'm begging you for this. If you need your revenge intimate, I'll find you anyone, a model, an athlete. I'll even try to contact my sister if you want. Anyone except Melissa," she said. I started laughing, and the sheet slid down a little, exposing my chest and upper abdomen. Andy looked, and I heard her sigh quietly. And then I suddenly wondered what she does for intimate. A month had already passed since the incident, and Andy needed intimate every day at least. "I'm serious, Eric," she said. "I know you better than anyone in the world, and until tonight, I've never seen you look at anyone but me like that." And when Melissa hugged you in your little pantomime greeting, her eyes almost rolled back in pleasure as you touched. But that's not the main thing, right? "What's the main thing, Andy?" I asked sharply. "Are you afraid of not being in control? You can go and choose the biggest creep we know, who also happens to be my best friend, and sleep with him on our veranda in broad daylight. But you want to choose who I'm with? I'll sleep with you to make sure it's not someone threatening you. Is that the problem?" "No, Eric," she said, "that's not a problem. The problem is that for me, there is a difference between love and closeness. I could have closeness with 3 guys tonight, and you would still be the only man I love. I can share it, you can't. If you sleep with Melissa, I'll lose you forever, I'm sure of it. Eventually, my curiosity will wear off, and you and I will get settled, and everything will be great again, and we'll have everything we want. But if you and Melissa get laid, things will never be the same, Eric. I know I shouldn't ask you to do this, but can I sleep with you tonight? I know you still think I'm spoiled, so I know you don't want to sleep with me, but it's been so long, it's been a while since I slept well, feeling safe and warm." "Okay, Andy," I heard myself say. She threw off her robe, and there was nothing underneath. Then she climbed into bed with me. Over the next few minutes, she slowly moved closer to me until we were almost touching. I felt one of her legs gently touch mine and then slowly begin to crawl over my legs. "Andy, just stop fidgeting and get comfortable," I snapped. "Are you sure you want me to be comfortable?" she asked quietly. I said, didn't I? It came out much harsher than I intended, but somehow the tone didn't seem to matter. "Okay," Andy said. I could hear the happiness in her voice. The next thing I knew, she had thrown one of her long legs over mine, and her left arm was wrapped around me. "That's much better," Andy purred. "I haven't felt this way in so long. This is how cozy I should be. Are you sure there's nothing you want to say or do before we fall asleep?" I thought about a lot of things at that moment. Turning over and getting his girl back was the main thought. I was about to say something and my shoulder touched her chest. "Oh," Andy exclaimed. "Sorry, it was an accident," I muttered. "Don't be sorry," Andy said. It didn't bother me, that was the problem, I realized. I don't think she cared who slept with her as long as she got intimate. I rolled over in the opposite direction, facing away from her and not touching her. "Sorry," I don't feel comfortable sleeping on my back, I said sharply. Good night, Andy. As I was falling asleep, I heard her sobbing quietly. I felt sorry for how our relationship turned out. I also felt guilty because she was clearly trying to fix our relationship, and I was quite indifferent to this. My thoughts said, let's wait and see if it works, good if not, we tried. The next morning, I was woken up by a dream in which Melissa and I had intimate. This shocked me because I had never actually experienced fantasies about Melissa until that moment. In a second, I realized what was happening and grabbed Andy by the shoulders, pushing her away from me. What the hell is wrong with you, Andy? I shouted at her. I just missed you so much, she cried, and you needed it too. I was asleep, Andy. I didn't understand what was happening. My mind was going back to a time before all this, when there was only love between us. When it didn't come to that, we were so happy then, and in my dream, it was just like the old days, good times. I lied through my teeth. But saying I dreamed about intimate with Melissa would only make things worse. Surprisingly, I had never lied to Andy until this moment, and I should have felt guilty about it, but I didn't. This did not bode well for our relationship. So why don't we just pretend it's true, she cried. Or pretend that we've already gotten over all my curiosity and the damage it caused us? That way, we could undo it all and go back to the way things were before, like none of this happened. Andy, I'm not that good at pretending, I said. You want me to pretend that you didn't cheat on me with Mike, pretend that we didn't discuss this beforehand, pretend that you didn't ruin over a decade of friendship, trust, and love because you were nosy? Okay, Andy, since you're so good at games, stretch your arms out and close your eyes. Andy held her hands out in front of her. Remember how we once treated each other, replay it in your mind, I said. Remember the closeness, imagine how much I loved you, that I could not bear to be apart from you. I was ready to do anything for you. I would fight a lion to get to you. Having intimate with you was the best thing in the world. Every inch of your body was a treasure to me. I always felt that if you died, even if it wasn't from illness or old age, even if it was something stupid like an accident, I would have died soon after. I was simply unable to live without you. Can you feel it, Andy? I chuckled. Put all these feelings in one hand. Even in the dark, I could see Andy's smile. Now let's talk about the other hand, I began. Have you noticed the distance between us now? Have you noticed that I no longer run around the house looking for you because I can't stand being away from you anymore? Sometimes I pray that you would go out to see someone, but then I wonder who you're visiting and if you slept with him. Every time you accidentally touch me, I have to take about 100 showers before I feel clean again. At this point, if you were in an accident, I don't know if I'd be upset or not. In some ways, I know you're trying to save our marriage, Andy, but I can't help but feel like maybe it would be better if we just let it die. If we broke up, it would have hurt me for a while, but I was almost ready for it. I'm not sure it would have hurt you because you were so happy to risk sleeping with Mike. I don't trust you anymore, and I'm not sure I ever can again. Melissa says it will take time, but I don't think we can ever go back to the way it was. And I wonder if it's any better. Should I look for something similar with someone else, then settle for a pale shadow of this with you? In short, we're like broken glass, Andy, all the water flows out of the hole. Only it's not the water that flows out, but my love for you. Andy's smile disappeared, and she began to cry again. Compare these two sets of feelings, Andy, I said sharply. Which one do you like best? The first, she said quietly. This is what I so desperately want back. I will do anything to get it back. And despite what you think, we will get it back. It may take a while and a lot of work, but I promise you, when this is all over, we'll get back there and we'll be stronger. Something about what she just said made my alarm bells ring, but I ignored it. So, Andy, think about how that other hand feels right now, I said. I don't want to, she said. I don't like it. I hate it. But you need to really realize this, Andy. This is really important for both of us, I said seriously. But why? It's terrible, and I don't feel like you love me, she exclaimed. Because, Andy, that's what you wanted to know all along, I said. Now you know. I went to the shower and started getting ready for work, leaving Andy in bed sobbing. I didn't like being so hard on her, but nothing seemed to get through to her. Some of the things she said filled me with anxiety and uncertainty. She said, "When this is all over," and in another conversation, she said, "When my curiosity completely dries up." She also told me that next time, she wouldn't be so forthcoming. Over the next few weeks, things gradually improved between Andy and me. We went back to being able to be in the same room with each other, and we even spent time together sitting on the deck after dinner. Mel would sometimes join us, which always made Andy jealous, but I could tell she was trying not to say anything. She didn't like that Mel, and I still spent a lot of time together. "Have you slept with her yet?" Andy suddenly asked me one evening. She was really angry because she saw me hugging Mel after one of our runs. We had just completed our first 10 miles and were just two friends congratulating each other on a big achievement. But Andy's jealousy got out of control. "If I had done that, you probably wouldn't be here anymore," I replied. Andy burst into tears and ran away. Later, she came out on deck. "Sorry," she said. "Sometimes it just hurts. I've been back in our house for almost 3 months, and things are better between us." "I can feel it," I said, "but you still won't even touch me, let alone have proximity. But then I see you hugging her, and I know it's just a friendly hug for you. But if you saw the way you look into each other's eyes and hug, you'd understand why I want to choke that. Now you know why Mike and I will never be friends again. The difference is that I only hugged Mel in public, with all my clothes on. You let Mike seduce you." "Yes, I allowed it," she answered sharply. "I allowed it, and now I'm forever spoiled. The only man I love, the one who promised to love me forever, doesn't even touch me. Do you know why I hate Melissa so much now? It's not just because you're friends. It's because I would literally die for you to hug me the way you just hugged her. You communicate so easily with her. You feel so confident and comfortable with each other. Mike and I are not like that. And as you keep reminding, he seduced me. He and I had proximity, and it didn't make us as close as you and Melissa. But in your mind, love and proximity are connected. Where's the connection between Mike and me? We hate each other now because we had proximity, and it cost us happiness. Eric, if I let someone drive your precious Mustang, you'd be furious. Let's say it was one of our neighbors who really wanted to know what it was like to drive it. So I let him ride it around the block one time, less than a mile, so your odometer won't even change. He didn't damage the car, and you wouldn't even know about it unless you got home and saw him pull into the yard. How would you react to that? I know you'd be mad at me, of course, but let's not talk about your feelings for me. Let's talk about how you would feel about your precious damn car." She could see how angry I was just thinking about it because we both knew that I probably would have killed him, cut his body into small pieces, and buried him all over the country. Nobody touched my Mustang. You would probably wash the car 2 or 3 times inside and out, condition the leather with some of your Armor All Leather cleaner, even though it was only sitting in the driver's seat. You would treat all the seats and the interior. You would treat the driver's seat 2, maybe 3 times. You'd go over the steering wheel and everything else that touched at least 3 times. You'd be furious. It would probably take a couple of days, maybe even a week, although I doubt it, but then you'd drive that car again, wouldn't you? You couldn't help yourself. You love that car. So even if someone else desecrates your precious car, you'd drive it again. You'd never have the keys to it again, and if I didn't drive it, I'd reprogram the garage door so no one could even get near it. But I'd probably drive it again, I admitted. So why the hell don't you drive me? She exclaimed. I keep telling you that there was nothing special about it. I didn't even like it, I was just curious. I've taken hundreds of showers since then, but you still haven't even kissed me, and it's been 3 months, not to mention about kissing. You told me a couple of weeks ago that having affinity with me was the most wonderful thing you could think of. If only you could go back to driving again. Why can't we go back to having affinity? A hug like that, what you just gave Melissa, would at least give me hope, Eric. I should have known it was all about this, I said slowly. How about tonight? I said, smiling as I pulled out my iPhone. Are you going to hug me tonight? She asked hopefully. I thought you wanted to be ridden, I smiled. I thought you wanted to have intimacy, she said, jumping up and down excitedly. This is for you, I said, handing her my phone. When she heard Mike's voice on the phone, her face turned red, and she threw it forcefully. That's how I lost that iPhone. The end of summer was approaching, and Andy and I decided to throw a party, just a few friends and neighbors and some family members. Melissa was invited, which made Andy very angry, but Mike was not, which made me very happy. Her parents, brothers, sisters, and their spouses will come. We were very busy planning and purchasing food and supplies for the party when this happened. Mel and I just got back from a run. I was watching her, but as she came into the house to take a shower when I noticed Mike jump over the fence into my yard. Andy told me she'd be in the store for a while, shopping for the party, so I knew she'd be home. What the hell was that bastard doing sneaking into my yard while Andy and I weren't home? I followed him, and I swear I thought he was trying to steal something from me or borrow some tool without asking, because he knew I would never lend him anything again. Mike didn't stop in my yard. He jumped over the fence into George and Sandy Cooper's yard. I waited a few minutes and followed him. He walked straight into their house without knocking. I took out my new iPhone 4. I bought it to replace the iPhone 3GS that Andy threw away. I crept up to the window. I was sure that Mike had now seduced Sandy Cooper, and the video would help Mel get rid of his cheater once and for all. Sandy Cooper was not at home, but there was George, him and 2 other guys. Andy was also in the damn house. "I'm next," Mike said. "No, Mike," Andy said. "You weren't very good and you ruined my marriage," Andy said. "I almost lost Eric because of you, damn Andy. I just wanted to see if I could make you scream like him. I almost lost Melissa over this too." "At least you're having intimacy," Mike said. "It's not the same," Andy replied sharply. "I didn't stay long enough to see Mike get his chance." Damn, I thought I'd cried all my tears for Andy, but I hadn't. I ran into the house and began to collect everything I needed. I was loading my suitcase into the Mustang when Melissa left her house. "Eric, what happened?" she asked. I handed her the phone and pressed play. "Eric, I'm so sorry," she said. She was crying too, and I could tell she meant it. "Where are you taking her this time? Back to her parents?" "No, Mel. I'm the one leaving this time. There's no going back after this. I just need to get away while I start hiding my assets to limit my losses in the divorce. Believe it or not, I'm probably going to miss you more than this traitor," I said. "No, don't say that." "It's not true," she said. "Wait a minute, I need to get something." Melissa ran to her house and returned with a suitcase. She threw it in the trunk next to mine and said, "Let's go." I looked at her in shock. "I told you a long time ago that I would get rid of Mike. This is as good a time as any," she said. "Unless you want me to come with you?" I didn't even think about where I would go, so we just drove around for a while and ended up having lunch by the lake. When it started to get dark and we still hadn't made any plans, I told Melissa that we would have to stay at a motel. I saw the first of these terrible romantic couples strolling along the water. I was so furious that I grabbed my giant soda and threw it at them. I would have hit them accurately if Melissa had not grabbed my hand and made the throw inaccurate. As soon as we got back into the car, my phone started ringing. I saw it was Andy and disconnected the call. We stopped at the nearest hotel we could find. It turned out to be the Summit Inn, a bit pricey, but at least we wouldn't have to worry about the neighbors. Melissa and I walked up to the counter and set our suitcases down. A few seconds later, a thin old man appeared behind the counter. "Sir, your wife is truly beautiful," he said. I looked at him weirdly and said, "My wife is a cheating blonde. She's the ugliest I can think of." "Because of that, her hair isn't blonde," he said, confused. Suddenly, I realized that he was talking about Melissa. I smiled and said, "Yes, you're right. She's really beautiful. She's the most beautiful woman I know." "We need 2 rooms," I said. "1," Melissa said. "Neither of us should be alone tonight." "Oh boy, we're in trouble," she said as we entered the room. "There's only 1 bed here." Melissa started laughing. "Eric, whether you know it or not, you are my best friend. I trust you completely. We'll be okay no matter what happens, but we need to talk." I didn't know whether to run away from the room or not. Every time a woman says we need to talk or something like that, it's always damn serious. Before we started our conversation, Melissa's phone rang. "I'm curious what this has to say," she said. "Honestly, I didn't think you would even notice that I was gone." "Oh boy," she suddenly said. "What?" I asked. "Wrong," she replied. She put her phone on speaker and raised a finger to her lips, signaling for me to listen but not speak. I nodded my head. "Hello, Andy," Melissa said. "Melissa, I hate to bother you, but can you come over here?" "I really need to talk to someone right now," Andy said. "Andy, I'm not home right now. I'm back at work, so I can't come. Can I wait until tomorrow?" Melissa said with a smile. "Besides, you and I aren't exactly friends, so are you sure I'm the right person for you to talk to?" "Mal, I'm so sorry for what I did to you and Mike. I'll do anything to make it right. I'll give you anything you want. Just tell me you're the person I need to talk to the most," Andy said. "Why is that, Andy?" Mel asked. "Because you know more than I do right now what Eric is thinking or where he might be headed," Melissa said. "Eric just left. I don't know where he is or when he'll be back. Last time we fought and he kicked me out, there was a reason for it, as you know. I did something terrible. But this time, I have no idea why he just left," Andy complained. Melissa and I tried our best not to laugh. "We were slowly getting closer again," Andy said sadly. "It was very hard for me, but I tried my best because I love him very much. We even planned a party together for the day after tomorrow. I went out shopping while you were running. I talked to Mike, and he said that you and Eric let's go for a run as usual. Mike's really jealous about this, you know. Anyway, he said he heard you come home, so I guess you went back to work." "Then where did Eric go?" she complained. "Andy, it's only 9:30. Maybe he just went out for a drive. Eric used to go out and drive every night, remember? It always seemed so stupid to me," Mel said. "Why?" "He likes to drive this car. I always thought that after me, this car is his favorite thing on this earth. Now I am sure that this car is more important to him than me," Andy said. "I didn't say it was stupid to go out for a drive, Andy. I said, you were stupid," Mal said. "Eric is a truly wonderful guy. He loves you so much. Do you know how lucky you are? Most women would die to be loved the way he loves you. When we were friends, you kept telling me how wonderful you were to spend time together. Why risk it for my lazy husband?" "That's what's stupid," Mel said. "I've been dreaming lately of being in your shoes," Andy said. "I got really jealous a few weeks ago after listening to him talk about how wonderful you were. I saw him hugging you, and I just wanted to kill you. Melissa, I will never let anyone come between us. In any case, I did something very stupid, and I regret it, but I'll have to deal with it later. I hope you're right." His car drove away, so maybe he really just went for a ride. "If you hear from him, please let me know." "Told you so," Melissa said, hanging up. "This doesn't even know or care where I am or if I'm coming home." I hugged Melissa to comfort her. After a few minutes, she calmed down. "Why don't you take a shower first while I make some calls?" she said. I thought she wanted to be alone for a while, so I went to the shower. I walked out wearing long boxers and a t-shirt. Somehow, it didn't feel weird being around Melissa in my underwear, perhaps because the boxers and t-shirt were very similar to what we both wore when we ran together every day. "Eric, turn off the lights," Melissa shouted. I did this, and then she came out of the bathroom and went to bed. "I thought we were going to talk," I reminded her. "We can also talk tomorrow," she said. "I don't want to harm your virtue." "How could our conversation harm my virtue? We always talk." "You're the person I'm most comfortable talking to," I said. "If we turn on the lights, I don't think we'll talk much because I'm kind," Melissa said. "Even though our spouses gave us permission to do this, I'm not sure it's a good idea. But I realized what I want from Andy is for all my grievances to disappear." Before I could ask what it was, Melissa told me she would never tell. It was as if she read my thoughts. This was how Andy and I used to communicate. This was what I missed. At some point during the night, the inevitable displacement occurred. For some reason, people in beds operate on the same principles as magnets. I think that all men are positively charged and all women are negatively charged. If you put two men or two women in bed, they will be as far apart as possible and stay there. Similar charges repel. But if you put a man and a woman in bed, they always seem to end up together. It was still dark when I realized that Melissa was in front of me. A microsecond later, I realized I was hugging Melissa. When we finished, Melissa just rolled over and smiled at me. She started kissing me tenderly and thanked me. "What are you giving thanks for?" I asked. "I should thank you." "No, Eric, I never did that." "Never," she said insistently. "What I did with Mike was never like that. Andy was stupid." She went back to kissing, and that's how we fell asleep. I slept like the dead. All the stress of the past months had disappeared. I was actually woken up by Melissa saying, "Eric, I need to go to the bathroom." "Are you trying to lay claim to me or just make sure I don't try to escape?" she asked. "Definitely the first," I said. "Well, you should know that I'm temporarily married," she laughed. "But I'm going to fix it immediately. And then I'll take suggestions. I would offer you my heart and a place in my life forever from now on," I said seriously. "I accept," she smiled. "I'm not in the market anymore." She went to the bathroom and urinated. Then I heard the shower start, and I jumped out of bed and ran there. I opened the door and followed her in, slowly starting to massage her sides with my hands. "Eric, what about Andy?" she asked. "Whom?" I answered. "Are you going to do a lot of nasty things to me today?" she asked. "No," I said. "Oh," she replied. She seemed a little disappointed. "I'm going to do nasty things to you every day," I said. We spent the morning calling work and taking time off. We made an appointment with my lawyer. We then spent the rest of the day in bed doing nasty things. At some point during the day, I was about to call room service and remembered my phone. My voicemail was full, and I had over 50 messages from Andy. Melissa had several calls from Mike and at least 10 from Andy. We couldn't stay at the hotel for too long, but during the day I came up with an idea. Melissa and I could move into an underground house. I hooked up the electricity and utilities, and we spent the rest of the day buying things we would need and moved in that evening. "Which bedroom will you sleep in?" asked Mel. "I was hoping to be in the one you would be in," I said. "Smart man," Mel said. We spent the evening planning. We had 2 divorces to start and other things to do. We decided to confront our cheating spouses at a party Andy and I were supposed to throw. Since she was obviously going to cancel the party, we started making a few calls to make sure the people we wanted would be there. I had several plans for myself. I had a friend who bought one of the retired police cars at auction. He could never drive it on the streets because he couldn't remove the local police colors and emblems. I also had a couple of friends who owed me money and were willing to do anything to get rid of that debt. At 1 hour 90 minutes, guests began to arrive at my house. Fortunately, Andrea's parents arrived first. "Mom, Dad, I had to cancel the party tonight," Andy said. She was crying and looked bad. "I know," her mother said. "But Eric called and said we should all talk after the party, so here we are. Please tell me you didn't sleep with another guy while you were narrowly avoiding divorce the first time." "Andy, you couldn't be that stupid, could you?" Andy looked away from her mother's hand. Andy Cooper arrived next, but without George. "He's on his way," she said. When Andy learned that Eric had also invited the Coopers, she wondered why. Mike arrived a few minutes later, looking puzzled. He looked around and finally asked Andy where Melissa was. Sally Stevens and her husband Kurt, and brother Andy and his wife were the next to arrive. Tom and Esther Jenkins called and said they would be late. Esther really wanted to come, but Tom seemed to hesitate. There was another couple no one recognized who claimed to have been invited by Eric, but they didn't arrive until almost 8 p.m. Sandy couldn't figure out where George was or what took him so long to arrive. George was in hell at 7 p.m. As Sandy drove up to Eric and Andrea's house, a police car stopped George. He was forced out of the car and handcuffed from behind. He was then put in the back of a police car and driven around while being asked questions. George was sure it was a case of mistaken identity. George couldn't see his watch with his hands behind his back, but he could see it was starting to get dark. He knew Sandy would be worried. He asked to call his wife. Officers told him he would receive his phone call after he was arrested and charged. He hadn't been arrested yet, just detained, so he sat still. George looked at the clock on the police car and saw that it was almost 8:15 p.m. He would have sworn he had only been in the car for 20 minutes or so. What George didn't realize was that every time he turned his back, the officers would advance the clock on the panel by 15 minutes. Finally, they drove out to a deserted place and waited. When the clock on the panel showed 20:55, the radio hissed and one of the officers began talking into it. "How did you catch him?" the officer shouted. "We've got this guy right here in the back of our brigade police car." George wondered what was going on. "Okay, kid, you were right, it's a case of mistaken identity." "Sorry for ruining your evening." As the officer removed George's handcuffs, he seemed to be stalling for time. In fact, he was resetting the time on George's watch to match the time on the police car's dashboard. 9:05 p.m. "You are free, sir," the officer said. "How am I free?" said George. "You drove me far from my neighborhood, detained me for 2 hours, and now you're just going to leave me here?" "Sorry, sir, we are not allowed to carry civilians in a police car unless they are part of an investigation or crime," the cop said as he and his partner drove away. "Hey, there's a gas station over there. Call someone to come pick you up." "Have a good evening, sir." George was sure he heard the policeman laugh as they drove away. George looked at his watch. Damn it, it was after 9 o'clock. As George began to walk toward the gas station, a masked man emerged from behind an abandoned store. "Hey buddy, I don't have any money or even a wallet," George said. The man didn't speak, he just walked up to George and wordlessly punched him in the face so hard that George was stunned. He stepped back and tried to raise his arms while he waited for his balance to stabilize. "What the hell?" said George. The man simply hit George again, even harder. George tried to speak, but his jaw hurt. He looked up just in time to receive another blow. This third blow knocked George off his feet. George thought the fight was over and he had lost. This was the first time he had been hit in the face so hard. But George was wrong. The fight was just beginning. He didn't know how long it took before someone found him and called an ambulance, but it seemed like an eternity. Although George was deceived into thinking that his beating began at 9 p.m., in fact, it was only 8:45 p.m. At 8:45 p.m., Eric's Mustang pulled into the driveway. He and Melissa walked out and entered the house, then walked out onto the deck. He saw his mother-in-law and father-in-law, as well as several neighbors. He greeted his wife's family warmly and hugged Sandy Cooper. He nodded to the mysterious couple. Mike walked over to talk to Melissa, but she brushed him off and followed Eric. Finally, Andy came down and saw Eric. She rushed to him and tried to hug him, but he pushed her away. "Eric, I forgive you for just leaving me, although I'm not sure why you did that," she said. The other guests politely pretended to be doing something else, but in reality, they were watching and listening intently. "Wait, you didn't go off alone to think, you were with Melissa, weren't you?" she said. "But why?" "We were just starting to make progress. I was starting to feel like you loved me a little again and that we had a chance to overcome our problems." She fell to the floor and started crying. Eric started clapping his hands. "Can you all come here for a minute?" he said. Melissa started clapping her hands too. "Everybody clapped for Andy," Eric said. "It was the best acting performance in history. Now we know where Andy's real talent lies. I think everyone here knows that Andy and I were having problems in our marriage. I recently kicked her out of the house for a while. Andy told me that she was curious about what it would be like to have intimacy with another man," Eric continued. "I begged her not to do it, but she did it anyway. She went and had intimacy with my ex-best friend Mike, Melissa's husband. It broke my heart, and I hated her for what she did to us, but I still loved her very much. Over the past few weeks, we have been trying to repair the destruction that Andy's curiosity brought to our marriage, but it was difficult for me. As Andy said, we had just begun this long process of repair when I noticed my ex-best friend walking into my backyard. I followed him and recorded what I found on my phone. Can you all follow me into the living room?" Everyone watched as I connected my iPhone to the plasma TV. Everyone was shocked when they saw Mike watching George Cooper and C.T. Stevens sleep with Andy. Tom Jenkins was also in the video. The great thing is that the iPhone 4 shoots high-definition video. The images on the screen were very clear. I think everyone now understands why I disappeared a few days ago. What they can't understand is what it's like to have the person you loved and wanted to spend the rest of your life with hurt you like that twice. I hope you all understand that there won't be a third time. All the love I once felt for her is gone. The only way for us now is forward. Eric stopped talking and nodded to the mysterious couple. They each took an envelope out of their pocket and handed one to Andy and the other to Mike. "You have been served," they told them. Tom Jenkins and C.T. Stevens were also given envelopes. Their envelopes contained documents about a lawsuit for breaking family ties. Since George was not present, the man asked Sandy Cooper, his wife, to notify him that he, too, was on trial. "That cheater!" Sandy shouted as she headed for the door. "No wonder he dumped me. I'm divorcing him too." Everyone else also headed toward the door. Soon, only Mike, Melissa, Eric, Andy, and Andy's parents were left in the room. "Eric, it's over." "It won't happen again," Andy cried. "You're right about that," Eric said sadly. "Where are you going?" Andy screamed. "We should talk about this. This could still work. I still love you. I only love you. You heard me tell them that on the tape. The only person I like having intimacy with is you. This was on the record too. It was just my curiosity." She held onto Eric's leg, trying to hold him back as he tried to get away. "Where do you think you're going?" Mike asked angrily. "We need to talk too. I'm not glad you left with another guy either. Even after what I did, two wrongs don't make a right, Melissa. We have bills to pay, woman, and your check bounced at our expense." Mike reached out and grabbed Melissa's hand, turning her toward him. "You're not leaving with him again," he snapped. "We're still married. No divorce and no intimacy with other guys." Eric didn't even slow down. He just turned around and hit Mike. Then he put his arm around Melissa's shoulders and led her out of the room. Melissa turned around as they reached the door. "You don't have to worry about me having intercourse with other guys, Mike. I would never do that. I'm loyal to the man I love. I've only made love to Eric. He's the one, the guy, and no more guys, including you." "I think I got what I wanted," Eric, Andy's father, said. "I can't imagine how you feel. I can't believe my daughter is capable of what we saw. Get some rest, and we can all come together and figure this out." Eric nodded, and he and Melissa left. It was almost 6 weeks before they all got back together. During these 6 weeks, Eric had no contact with Andy. She called him hundreds of times, but a restraining order kept her away from his work, and she didn't know where he lived. She suspected he was still with Melissa, which made her angry. She was sure that Eric was falling in love with Melissa, not just having intercourse with her. According to Andy, this was simply unfair. Her curiosity was only about intercourse, not love. She never intended to leave Eric or fall in love with someone else. Several notable events occurred during these 6 weeks. Andy also experienced some kind of breakdown. Eric eventually arrived with a truck to pick up the rest of his and Melissa's belongings. Mike refused to let Eric take them until the police arrived, and Eric showed them the court's permission to retrieve Melissa's things. At their meeting, everything went about as Melissa and I thought it would. Both Mike and Andy refused to sign the divorce papers. Melissa offered Mike their house, which he couldn't afford because he didn't work. He also couldn't afford his own truck or utilities. Mike, at 40 years old, had to live with his parents for a while and then on the street. I offered Andy the house as well as half of our checking account savings. I paid off her credit cards and offered to pay her a lump sum instead of alimony so that I wouldn't have to deal with her. "Eric, can you somehow solve this?" her father asked. "She's ready to forgive you for the affair. We all are. We know what she put you through." "I'll give up everything for you," Andy said, "but you won't get this divorce. You won't get it." "Besides," Andy said, Melissa looks really beautiful, but her belly is coming back. Are you sure you want to be stuck with this? I laughed and patted Andy on the head. Stupid bunny, that's not a belly. What is it then? Andy smiled. No, it's a baby, Melissa said, rubbing her belly. I told you, I got what I wanted. Immediately after this, Mike vomited. At that moment, Andy seemed to pass out and was hospitalized. I'll kill you, she screamed as she jumped over the table at Mel. That was the last time I saw her until she showed up at the hospital this morning. Melissa was still sleeping, so I went to the store to buy her more flowers. Even though there was nowhere to put them, I wanted her to know how much I loved her and how special our daughter was to me. When I returned to her floor, Melissa's room was full of people. Outside, I saw at least 5 security guards and several real police officers. A few minutes later, I saw them take Sandy away in handcuffs. I later learned that Andy had gone into Melissa's room, ostensibly to leave a card. The ever-vigilant nurses saw Andy on the video monitor trying to strangle Melissa while she slept. 2 nurses entered the room and grabbed her, pulling her away from Melissa while the other called security. Andy ended up in a psychiatric hospital again, this time for a long time. It's known that she will be there for at least 10 years. This is good news. This crazy woman and her curiosity will be far from us for a long time. The bad news is that in our state, you cannot bring any legal proceedings against a person found to be mentally incompetent. Unfortunately, this means I am still married to her. I was able to get my house back, and Melissa and I live there. She finally got a teacher's assistant to help with grading, so our evenings are free to sit on her deck and enjoy each other. We often go to the lake and stroll along the water because damn, it's romantic. But I keep my eyes open in case men want to throw something jealous at us. How did you like this story and how did the main character make you feel? I think that Eric acted wisely that he found another woman, because Andy was unworthy of forgiveness, that's for sure. Melissa is very nice and I am sure that their life will be fabulous. Thank you for your views and likes. We are glad that you stay with us and support our channel. Until new videos.